It's a public health environmental hazard, dumping lead, arsenic, mercury, and other toxins. What will you as a county council executive do to solve that problem? And what are your plans for transitioning rapidly from coal-generated electricity to improve our air quality and slow climate change? Thank you. Both of you, either one.
Okay, so the first piece of legislation that I introduced was a resolution that began the process of Montgomery County transitioning to renewable energy. We started in 2002 with 10%, shortly it went to 20%, now 100% of all the electricity used by Montgomery County government comes from solar and wind. I just passed legislation to make it easier to establish community solar and to exempt community solar from the county energy tax. Soraya and I, this is my wife Soraya, say hi everybody. We have solar panels on our roof, and I would like to work as best we can to facilitate providing solar panel on every roof that can handle it, and for those that can't, provide access to community solar. We need more space for solar farms, we need more solar panels on rooftops and in public spaces. We're moving in that direction. We've adopted very aggressive goals for carbon reduction for Montgomery County, and I would urgently hope that the time will come where we no longer have to depend upon coal-fired power here in the county. I'm strongly in favor of encouraging solar and wind. I passed a program called Clean Energy Rewards. During the recession, it's taken away. I'd like to bring it back. So I'd like to see the proceeds of the energy tax invested in solar and wind. So there's a lot of things that we can do, but we're already a national leader in that regard. And I'd like to see us eliminate our reliance on coal-fired power.
So to more directly answer your question, I testified at the hearing against the coal-fired power plant. I sponsored a resolution opposed to the coal-fired power plant. I think that the coal-fired power plant has to be brought up to current standards, and if they're not willing to bring it up to current standards, it needs to close. It ought to close anyway, but it's not like we need it. We would still have energy here without that power plant. No one has made the argument to close the power plant, Montgomery County goes dark. We have the ability, and I think the state has the ability to make the appropriate decisions to close it. I think we should do a lot more solar. I regret the fact that on the verge of passing what would have been record legislation that would have allowed the county to finance solar panels on people's roofs, that the banking industry came in and said, you can't do this. And it was stunning because they said we couldn't put a lien on property when they already had a lien on property. And I'm thinking, what is wrong with this? I can run up $1 gazillion on my credit card. The bank doesn't say stop using your credit card. You can go and get a second mortgage. I've had second mortgages. My bank never said, gee, Mark, I don't think you should or should not have a second mortgage. So I'm going to go back at this problem because there is a way for us to finance this. We're doing it for the commercial sector, which we should, but we should find a way to do it for Montgomery County homeowners. It would transform this county.
Okay, thank you. We have a lot of people lined up, so we're going to take an aye or nay vote on whether or not we should limit the answers to 60 seconds. Okay, everybody in favor of limiting the answers to 60 seconds, say aye or raise your hand or both. Aye. And everybody who wants to keep it at 90 seconds. Aye. That's pretty close. How about if we do it 77? Well, I don't know.
75 it is.
Okay, we got it.
Says the timekeeper.
As a public employee in a workforce with a low morale, my question is how you'll alter the do more with less style of governing. If I may preface, libraries and other public entities are tasked with expanding services. At the same time, we're not able to keep up with those staffing with those services.
So I think that the county needs to look seriously at how we manage ourselves. And I look to figure out how do we pivot people in places where they're really not needed in order to put those resources in places where they really are needed. We know that we've got a flat revenue stream coming up, and we know that we've got increasing costs. And when you have those two things colliding with each other, you either surrender or you figure out how to manage better. And my approach is to manage better. I believe, and if you talk to employees in this county, they can tell you ways to do things more efficiently than we are doing them now. We have been very reluctant to make the workforce our partners. And if I'm elected county executive, I'm going to make the workforce our partner, not my partner, our partner, because you guys work for everybody. I'm trivial. You work for everybody else. So I want to make sure that we look at what we do and that you help us come up with ways to do this better so that workers feel invested in having made this county a better running place, so that you feel better about your jobs. I talk to employees who think there's far too much that's done by too few people. That it's just not an efficient way of doing things. So I want to help you. I want to make you a partner in making this a better county. And no one's ever asked you guys to do that before. I'm serious about doing it.
Well, that's a good answer. I agree with what Mark said. I'm chairman of the committee that funds the libraries, and this year, finally, we got back to the level of funding that we were at before the recession. The libraries took especially hard hits during the recession, and finally, we've gotten back the hours, we've gotten back the staffing, we've gotten back the collection. Look, Montgomery County is a good place to work. There's a lot of job protection, but I do agree that we need to listen to workers, we need to inspire workers, we need to remind the county workforce that the meaning of life is service to others. We're here to serve the taxpayers. I want to see a culture of customer service. When you interact with county employees, it should be a pleasure. I'll only be successful as county executive if I'm able to inspire the workforce to achieve big goals, to make this community better, to address equity and social justice, to provide real job opportunities, to provide excellent customer service so that everybody feels good about the process of interacting, the public interacting with county employees interacting with the public. I'll have an open door as county executive. I want to hear from rank and file workers. I absolutely agree with Mark that those who are doing the work often understand the best way to do it. I think we're heavy in middle management. I think we can restructure a lot of positions and put more support on the front line in customer service. Everyone who interacts with Montgomery County government, whether it's an investor bringing jobs here or whether it's a single mom applying for social benefits to support her family, ought to get superb customer service and ought to be treated with dignity and respect.
Great, thank you. Okay, next audience question.
According to the county's own data, transport accounts for about a third of all greenhouse gas emissions generated in Montgomery County. Do you support adding more lanes to I-270 and 495 as proposed by Governor Hogan? If so, explain. And what else should Montgomery County do to reduce transportation greenhouse gas emissions?
We're going to start with George on this one.
So, as I said earlier, I'm the co-founder of Purple Line Now. I'm a strong supporter of rail transport. I'd like to see it everywhere we can get it. If it isn't feasible, I'm in favor of dedicated lanes for buses. I'd like to see more dedicated lanes in our existing right-of-way, including on 270. So I do support expanding capacity on 270. I'm amenable to the idea of tolls, congestion pricing, and dedicated lanes for transit. I can't critique Governor Hogan's proposal because we don't really know what's in it. Governor Hogan did not consult with Montgomery County government before he came out with this plan. Secretary Ron is coming to the county council this week, and so we'll have the opportunity to understand what he's proposing. I appreciate that Governor Hogan has paid attention to our traffic congestion problem. Some of the things that he's proposing sound like science fiction. He's supporting a hyperloop under the ground, he's supporting a maglev train that levitates above the ground, and he's supporting all kinds of things for 270 and 495 that we don't understand and that it doesn't sound like we have the space or the right-of-way for. So I don't want to reject out of hand what the governor's talking about because I love science fiction and I'm a fan of high-tech and I'd like to see innovative approaches to reducing congestion and getting people from place to place. I'm just not sure of how real some of these proposals are. I kind of suspect they're more focused on re-election than on actually addressing our congestion problem.
How about you, Mark? Do you like science fiction?
I like it as a side entertainment. I don't like it as informing me of what to do. I thought Hogan's proposals were just off mark. If you could read the piece I wrote rather extensively about what I think was wrong with it. The county council, to its credit, supported 2 reversible lanes on I-270. You do not have a bidirectional problem. You have a one-direction problem. It's called the peak direction. And if we put 2 lanes in the middle within the existing paved environment where it is possible to do it, You could get 2 lanes available in peak direction, you could run one of them with BRT, with HOV vehicles, and you could make a difference. The Beltway is a much more difficult problem, but I gotta say this at the end of the day, you can do whatever you want with the Beltway and I-270. Our congestion problems start when you get off those roads and get in, try to get to Bethesda, try to get to Silver Spring, and if you don't put BRT in to alleviate the number of cars that are coming there, if you do not find a way to do dedicated lane and to do this right, we're gonna be forever mired in congestion, and we're not gonna be a desirable place for people to come. So I support building BRT. I proposed 110 lane miles of it, because that's the kind of project, you want to think big, that's the kind of project you can do to make a difference.
Okay, the next audience question starts with Mark.
So the president pulled out of the Paris climate change, but now we're the only country that's pulled out of it, while China put $300 billion in renewable energy. As a result, cities, counties, and states are fighting back on their own. So, first question is, do you support fighting back against climate change, and what are the top 2 or 3 things you think the county should do?
Well, I think what the president did is insane. And the fact that you stand alone in the world and doesn't give anybody pause just speaks to the egomania that surrounds him. And that's a problem, but you know, I'm here, I'm not there. So what you're asking is, what would you do? Like I said, I would do the BRT, because the BRT would take enough cars off the road to have an impact on fossil fuel emissions and to have an impact on travel time. That's important. I would look for a way to go forward with what the banks stopped us from doing, because California gets hit hard. California went forward with it anyway. And if California can go forward and they're not stopped, we ought to figure out a way to go forward, because I see solar roofs popping up all the time. I drive a Leaf, I can't do solar because I'd have to kill the trees around my house. I'm not doing that. But I get it, and I think we ought to do it. So I'm really strongly in favor of doing that. I'm strongly in favor of making sure it winds up on all our schools and all our county buildings. I cannot believe we designed the courthouse with a south-facing wall without a tree to shade it, and couldn't figure out how to put solar electric on the south-facing wall, because they do it in other countries, and they do it in other parts of this country. We need to be more innovative and more creative than we've been, and I would take the lead on this. It's just, it's an opportunity we're not taking full advantage of.
So I don't think you're going to find a lot of differences among the council members, because we've all been working very closely together on very aggressive climate change goals. When the president announced that he was pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords, I authored the resolution, Marc co-sponsored it, voted for it, to ensure that we in Montgomery County continue to achieve greenhouse gas reduction goals that are more aggressive than the Paris Climate Accord goals. And mostly we're doing these things unanimously. We're working on another resolution right now. Mark and Roger and I are all co-sponsoring it, that would implore that the state would adopt much more aggressive renewable portfolio standards, and that the county would accelerate its achievement of greenhouse gas reduction goals. We need to invest in wind and solar. I was the original sponsor of the green buildings legislation in 2006, which at the time was the most aggressive green buildings law in the United States. Now it's out of date, but we just recently modernized it by passing the 2012 International Green Buildings Construction Code. We need to adopt the most recent version, which is the 2015 version, as soon as possible. So we need to assess every possible source of carbon emissions, whether it's buildings, whether it's transportation, energy use, and invest in alternative technologies that will also create jobs and create a niche industry for Montgomery County. I'm the co-founder of Bethesda Green, which has an environmental jobs incubator supporting green technology, energy
Thank you,
efficiency, and
George.
smart,
It's time for the next
smart
question.
technology.
Thank you, Matt Lovesack, Montgomery County Renters Alliance, and thank you both for your service. More than almost 40% of Montgomery County now lives in rental housing, but with just 60 days notice, a renter could be told that they have to leave their home without any stated reason. If you become county executive, would you support just cause eviction law that would prevent a landlord from evicting anyone without a stated reason?
We did already have that question, Matt. So that has to happen in Annapolis. I'm certainly in favor of protection against unfair eviction, but it can't be done at the county level.
I'll just ditto that because we already answered it.
Okay, next question.
I'm a voter, as you may know, I'm a voter that
Please pull the
values...
mic up to your mouth.
Sure, thank you. I'm a voter that values the right to As you may know, I'm a voter that values environmental issues above most other important issues. In what ways are you a better candidate to vote for compared to your rival in regard to protection of the county's natural resources?
So, I'll say I took the lead on fighting 10 Mile Creek. I fought 3 battles to preserve that creek, not one. I fought it 3 times to get it done. I was an opponent of the ICC. It brought none of the traffic relief, none of the development, and plenty of environmental damage. And I thought that was wrong then, and I think it was wrong now. I oppose M83. I'm not going to rip another road through another wooded part of Montgomery County. I think there are other solutions. I think we do have to do something about a better connection from Clarksburg south, but that's not the right connection to make. If it's not the right connection, even if I had the money, I've got better places to spend the money than that. I was the only council member who supported the pesticide action at Tacoma Park. Everybody else demurred. I went out front on it because I thought Tacoma Park was taking the lead, and I was glad to be a co-sponsor of George on the bill that he introduced at the county level, but I thought that was absolutely the right thing to do. I was the only council member to vote against tire crumb in playing fields because I had read the scientific data on that. I know what's in tire crumb. It's called carcinogens. Now, we all passed the resolution, but before the ABC News story made headlines and everybody panicked, I just read the science. I knew what to do. I read science. And I'm going to do everything I can do to make sure Montgomery County is in the forefront of keeping the environment safe.
Okay, now, George, you get to answer that one.
So I started the process, as I mentioned earlier, of having the county get its own electricity from solar and wind. I introduced the green buildings legislation, which we recently updated. I'm the co-founder of Bethesda Green, which is one of the strongest environmental organizations in the state, with what was the first green jobs incubator in the state. We're all working together on a variety of ways to improve our investment in solar and wind. We're at 100% now for the government, but we need to provide access and make it easier for consumers to put solar panels on their roofs. I'm co-founder of Purple Line Now, strong advocate for public transportation to provide alternatives to the automobile. I voted with Mark on the 10 Mile Creek issue, and I was the sponsor of the pesticide law, which prevents release of toxic chemicals that affect our health, our pets, our waterways. We are fighting the pesticide lobby on that to this day. They sued. We lost the first round. We're continuing to fight. So I'm very proud of my record on the environment, and I'll continue to be an environmental champion if you make me your next county executive.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
Thank you for being here tonight. Today, the $15 an hour minimum wage law became law, so thank you for your work on that. However, this bill is not going to affect to help low-wage workers for years. As county executive, what will you do now to help the lowest wage workers in the county, including but not limited to increasing the tipped minimum wage? Thank you.
So the number one thing I've done for low-wage workers is that I've provided universal access to health care in this county through the Montgomery Cares system of clinics, which makes sure that even if you don't have health insurance, you get to see a doctor, and 70,000 patient visits will occur this year. We were able to achieve universal access only because the Affordable Care Act also became available in the Maryland Health Connection and the expansion of Medicaid. As county executive, I will fight to preserve those, and I will build coalitions with other counties to make sure that Maryland is in the forefront of providing access to health care. I was the lead sponsor of the Sick and Safe Leave Act, which protects workers if they fall ill or they need to care for a loved one. We protect every worker in Montgomery County. We are the strongest local Sick and Safe Leave Act in the United States. Mark supported it. I worked with Mark on many of these issues, and I supported Mark's efforts on the minimum wage.
So I'll ditto most of what he said. I want to add, talk a bit about tip workers. This has been a big discussion nationally, and I've talked to a lot of people in that business in Montgomery County. And what I find is that people are really divided about it. There are a whole bunch of people who wait tables in Montgomery County make a lot more than $15 an hour, and they are afraid that if this bill goes in, if we were to include them in $15, that their tips would actually drop, because people would say, hey, you're paying a decent wage now, I don't have to tip you. Most of us know we tip because we know the wages for the waiters and waitresses is terrible. So tipping is what we do to make up for bad wages, and they're afraid of that. So But I do think there's a problem because workers are afraid to report when they don't get paid. Because you may wind up winning your case, you may wind up losing your job. And so what I want to do is the state requires a report to dollar every month. It includes the wages that everybody's made along with all their tax deductions. I want to add a column to that that includes the number of hours worked, run it through a computer. The computer divides hours by, or wages by hours, determines which employers have violated the law, sends out a violation notice, a fine, and instructs them to pay the employee what they're owed.
Thanks, Mark, and you can answer the next question. So, next question.
Thank you for being here. The 2009 Montgomery County, Maryland Climate Protection Plan contains 58 specific recommendations for reducing community greenhouse gas emissions. However, according to the March 2015 Department of Environmental Protection Annual Report on Sustainability, few of the goals have been realized. Would you support increased staffing and budget for the Office of Sustainability so they can put in place concrete, measurable plans for fully meeting the county's climate goals?
We just say yes to that.
Yeah, we could say yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Why should Montgomery County expend considerable effort to bring Amazon's second headquarters here? I personally think Mr. Bezos already has way too much economic and political power, and I personally am opposed to giving large corporations additional, benefits or help to locate here.
Well, there's more than 200 communities that have applied for the Amazon 2 headquarters. I don't want to overplay our chances of getting it. One other candidate in this race, well, actually 2 others have promised that they'll bring it here. We'll see if we get it. It's a benefit to have high-wage jobs in any community. I don't know the details of Montgomery County's proposal because it came from the private corporation that we created for economic development purposes. But I wouldn't hold your breath expecting that Amazon is coming to Montgomery County. The odds are against us. If it comes, then we'll have higher incomes and it'll grow our tax base and we'll have more money to invest in services and libraries and police and parks and all the things that people depend on in this great county because we'll have more tax revenue. So net, I think it would be a benefit to the county, but I'm not over-promising and I wouldn't mislead people into thinking that Amazon is coming here.
So I had a really interesting conversation. I was at Steve Fuller, who is a regional economist that everybody generally considers the regional expert on growth and development. And he silenced the room at the end of his speech when he said, "Why do you want Amazon?" And it made me think, and it made other people think. What he said was, "This is the size of the Pentagon." And he said, "Which of you has room for something this size of the Pentagon?" And everybody kind of shook their heads. But no one said, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't do this." They just shook their heads. And he said, you can't handle the traffic. There's no guarantee you'll be able to build the infrastructure in a timely manner to match what would come forward, because if it's done his schedule, it may not be on your schedule. And what he suggested, I thought, was something we don't do, we all talk about we should do. And he said, you all ought to cooperate. He said, you ought to make a regional proposal to Amazon. You ought to propose that Amazon locate, and you divide the jobs up among the region, that everybody you get something that you can manage, but nobody tries to take everything, and that you'll all be better off if you work together. And I was struck, and the sad thing is, a lot of people walked out of the room saying, gee, I wish we could do that, and our proposals in there now.
Okay.
So Mark, is it your position that you don't want Amazon in Montgomery County?
I wouldn't mind having a bite of Amazon. I don't know whether we can manage Amazon.
So is it your position that you don't want the Amazon headquarters?
I don't want anything until I see what the proposal looks like.
So neither of them knows what the proposal is.
And none of us know what the proposal looks like.
We'll
So
have
we
to
don't
wait
know
on
whether it
that
makes
one.
sense or not.
Okay, next question goes to Mark, right?
So you both talked about support for clean energy in Montgomery County. There are several proposals that are proposed to be pushed through the state legislature this year or next year. One is the Forward with 50. There's another one that's 100%. Which of those would you like to support, if any, and why or why not?
So my preference is the 100, because it's not a climate emergency. If if you don't do this. I mean, you can't simultaneously scream emergency and then say, we'll do 50% by this point, and then we'll see where it goes. So I'm in favor of the 100. I'm in favor of getting the black liquor out of this and other things which really aren't green out of the bill once and for all, so that the bill looks like what an environmental bill should look like. I failed to mention earlier, but my office is working on a proposal now that would require every home builder of single family and townhouses to be required to tell a tenant tell a purchaser what the option would be of putting a solar roof on before they put the roof on. And just give them the price of a solar roof, give them the price of the cost of electricity gotten from PEPCO going out, or Exelon as it is, and give consumers an opportunity to make that decision before the roof goes on the house. Because once the roof goes on the house, you're not doing it. And you may not do it until it's time to replace your roof again, particularly if you're thinking about Musk's tiles. So I think that's something we can do, locally that would encourage people to move toward more solar and wouldn't be a burden on the industry, but I think actually might enlighten a lot of consumers.
I'm certainly in favor of going to 100% renewable portfolio standard if the state can get there. We got to be clear, anything we do is just advisory. I'm glad to have the chance to ask my friend Mark if we could just do one resolution instead of two. There was an early draft which was circulated of a council resolution that called for the 50% RPS. And then when Mr. Berliner learned that there was a 100% proposal, that resolution got pulled. Now there's a second resolution that calls on the county to adopt more aggressive goals. I think one resolution would be sufficient. It would be great if we could just do one and not two, but we're all cooperating on this. Mark and Roger and I are all in agreement on it. While I have the microphone, I just want to be very clear. If we could secure billions of dollars in infrastructure investment and tens of thousands of highly paid jobs, I am in favor of the concept of having Amazon come here. And I want to be clear about that. Mark won't say whether he's in favor of it or not. If we could get it, it would be a benefit. We do need to grow our tax base. We're not going to achieve our social justice goals unless we have the tax base to support investment in healthcare, investment in schools, investment in police and parks and libraries. You've got to grow the economy, attract jobs, and attract investment. So I would be in favor of Amazon coming here, but I think the odds are against us.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
Given the federal government's growing more repressive, I believe we need things like the Trust Act, which is not about sanctuary, but to ensure the civil rights of law-abiding immigrants and minorities. So why not put in as an ordinance to enshrine at the local level in law, not just in practice? And how do you feel about added measures suggested by stakeholders, such as providing law enforcement transportation from courthouse to safe places, requiring officers live in the communities they serve, and/or provide incentives to educate communities about rights?
So the council supported the Maryland Trust Act. It is policy, and the council has passed resolution after resolution making it clear that county law enforcement will not enforce federal immigration law. We have no role there. It's not a county responsibility. And some of the other things you asked about, I'm not that clear on. You're saying that you would mandate that cops have to live in the county? I need to know more details.
And/or require give incentives for them to encourage them to.
I need to know the details of what the incentives are. I don't know enough about that proposal.
So I always thought it was a good idea to try to get cops to live in the county. The cities had policies where it helped people buy houses if they lived in Tacoma Park. If you were going to be a policeman in Tacoma Park, that wasn't enough to get everybody to do that. I don't think it got very many people to do it, but I think incentives are a decent idea. I don't know that the county police can escort somebody, because when you come out of the jail, they release you. And if somebody from ICE is there waiting, which is what happens, they can't take that person and just whisk them away. I mean, this is where we run into the limits of what I think our authority is. But I'm happy to have this discussion. I thought that, we worked really hard to get the state to adopt the Trust Act in a way that was consistent with what we thought would keep everybody out of trouble, but also keep the immigrant community safe. This is, if we lose our protections from the Fed and they decide to come down heavily, then no one's safe. And I think what we do is really valuable. I want to make sure that nothing happens to interfere with our ability to provide as much protection as we possibly can provide. Nobody wants to turn these people over.
Great, next question.
Over the years, I've participated in the very frustrating master plan process. I've attended public meetings, testified at hearings, mostly about historic preservation and other land use issues. I care very much about my community. My question is, what value do you place on input from activists who are very, very persistent in their efforts to protect their communities, the physical and residential character of their communities? Are we NIMBYs?
I don't look at people as NIMBYs. I look at people who make an investment and decide this is the place they came to. There are a million people who chose to come to Montgomery County. It's kind of hard to say, well, you guys are past stable designing for the next 140,000. We don't even know what they want. We don't know what they're going to want. So I do believe that it's important to pay attention to communities. I bristle a little bit at the word activists, because I can have activists who aren't supported by the community. And so I'm really concerned that it's the breadth of the community, or certainly a significant portion of the community, and not just the activist side of the community. It's important to know who people are representing and how strong the feelings are. I have done this a long time and been on the activist side of things on innumerable issues, and I do find that these people are just absolutely mischaracterized. I mean, the folks in Bethesda are saying, you don't overcrowd our schools, you've got no plan for our schools, and you have no plan of bringing transportation in balance, and that makes you a NIMBY. And that does not make you a NIMBY. They ask for the same heights that we accord every other neighborhood at the edge, 70 feet, which we do routinely throughout the county, where CBDs interact with the fringes of residential communities. So I think we should have been more active.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Mary, I appreciate your input. I'm always glad to hear from you. I'm glad to hear from all my constituents, but I also seek out the points of view of people who don't know where 100 Maryland Avenue is located. I think we have a problem in this county that the people we see and hear are not fully representative of all of the people who live in this county. So I think we need to invest in much better messaging, much better communication. I am the only candidate running for county executive who speaks Spanish. I think we need to be very engaged in getting the growth communities, the working class communities to get their input. I was very disappointed that we had almost no testimony from workers affected by the $15 minimum wage. County Executive Leggett's study only surveyed employers. So I think we have to do a better job of getting a broader range of input. But again, I must restate, I am running for Montgomery County Executive. I want to manage in a hands-on way the executive branch of government, the land use and planning function about which my good friend Marc Elrich is so eloquent and so passionate, and he's been deeply involved in his 3 terms on the county council, is not the county executive's job. I fully understand the job I'm running for, and land use and planning is not in that job description.
Great, okay. Another question.